Hello, today we're going to go through the W Plus pumps exchanging a double seal. So the first step is we have to remove the casing off the pump. To do that, we will loosen up the clamp nut and remove the clamp. This clamp nut is torqued on to a specification, so to loosen it, we will take a wrench, pop it loose. Now, keep in mind this is a demo pump, so we don't have everything torqued down. I'm going to remove the clamp. Now I'm going to go ahead and remove the casing. The casings have a tendency to stick on. It's very common to have to lightly tap this with a rubber mallet if needed. If that case, you can tap it right here on the port. For this case, I will be able to knock it off. Now the first thing I'd like to show you is this casing has a groove right here. That groove lines up with a pin on the top of the back plate. So if I was going to mount this pump with a vertical output, that pin would go on top. If I'm going to mount this pump horizontal, I would have to loosen the clamps on the back cover. I will then rotate it 90 degrees and move the clamp to a different hole. And I'll show you that here further on in the video. Now, there's going to be a guard on both sides of the motor adapter. This side has been removed already. And so there is an Allen wrench here that we just have to loosen. The guard itself has a slot in the bottom that just goes into over the casting, and the top notch slides in over a bolt that you tighten down. So now we have to remove the impeller nut. The impeller nut is also torqued on. So to remove the impeller nut, we have to hold the stub shaft from rotating. To do that, the stub shaft has a hole in the side here, which is called a balance hole. And what we'll do is we'll put a bar, in this case I'm using a 1/2 inch extension, into this hole. And then with this, we can hold this in place while we loosen the impeller nut. So we'll go ahead, hold this in place, put this on, and we'll break this free and loosen it up. I'm going to remove the impeller nut. And I am holding the impeller to make sure it doesn't fall off, but notice this impeller nut has an O-ring right here. And we'll replace that O-ring. I'm going to take the impeller off. Here we have our product seals. So in the impeller is one seal here. I'm going to pop it off. And what you'll see is a seal and an O-ring. These items will be replaced. In the back plate here is the other half of the product seal. We'll go ahead and pull that out. And what comes out then is a seal face and an O-ring. And this seal face is different than the first seal face that we removed from the impeller. These items will be replaced. I'm going to set this off to the side. Take the casing O-ring off. And now I'm going to remove the back plate. To remove the back plate, I will remove the two clamps that clamp the back plate to the adapter. Now I'm going to hold this up. If you look very carefully right here, you'll see one of the clamps due to the cutaway. So I'll loosen this nut up. I'll take this clamp and I'll just pull it back a little bit. You don't have to take that bolt completely off. There's also one located on the other side of the pump here. So again, as we can see, clamps are located across from each other, and there's two clamps. Earlier we mentioned rotating the casing. So if we were to rotate this casing, if I would take this and rotate it, let's say 90 degrees, notice the clamps, and then in the wrong position, you would remove them and remount them across. So back here we have the two seal faces for the flush. One is mounted on the flush adapter. I'm going to go ahead and remove this. And these components, there's a seal face and an O-ring right here. And what I'm going to do is replace this item. But just to show you, this seal face is the same seal face that's located right here. And there's a seal face right here that goes into the stub shaft. I'll remove that now. Now, this seal face here and O-ring is the exact same seal face that goes in the impeller. So they are interchangeable. I will take the flush housing apart. There's 4 bolts that hold this on. For our demonstration pump here, we have 3 located in it because of the cutaway. I'll hold this down while I remove the last one, and that just makes it easy to unscrew so I don't have to fight the spring. I'm going to remove the seal housing, and notice there's grooves in the side here. Remove the spring holder, remove the spring, and our pressure ring. So there are 4 components for a double seal. So for a double seal, an O-ring is required here to seal the flush liquid from exiting the pump. So we'll put an O-ring in that groove. Take the pressure ring, tab side down, the open area here, a concave area for the spring will be located up, and these tabs here will be located in between the bolt holes, so here and here. We'll set it in here, and for our demo, it will look like this. Now we'll take the spring, our spring adapter here. Notice there's also pins that stick out on the right and left side. I will line these up with the notches that stick out on their component. So I'm going to hold this up so you can see it, how the notches do line up, top and bottom. Now I'm going to install the flush housing. I will line up the notches here with the tabs on the spring retainer. And I will have to push down and kind of wiggle it to get everything to line up, and then twist it and line up the bolt holes. There we go. While holding it down, insert a screw. First screw is in. I will insert the second screw. So we have this assembled now. Here's the top of the pump, inlet outlet for the flush. We have the housing on, and now we have to put our seal faces on. First thing I do is I'll install a seal face into the shaft. So when you install a seal face into the shaft does not have a pin that you line up with a notch here. So without a pin, this O-ring needs to go in dry. So it's a little harder to get this O-ring in. I normally put the O-ring in the hole here that is in the shaft. At this point, I'll put this seal in at a little bit of an angle, push down on it, and pop the back half in. And the seal's installed. Now, second seal goes in the back of the body here for the flush. Grab one of the seals, the longer end on it, has 4 notches on it. We line up 2 of the notches with 2 of the notches here in the pressure ring. There's the O-ring that goes on. In this case, I'll put the O-ring on the seal first, although some people do prefer to put it in the flush housing first. So I'll set it in there, line it up. You can feel when it goes in the groove. And I'll go ahead and I'll push this 3 times. And by pushing it in and out 3 times, it sets in place and will stay located. Right now I'm going to install then the back plate onto the pump body. We have our seals installed. I'm going to line the pin to the top. We have to be careful not to damage the seal by hitting the stub shaft here. Now, without a motor on this pump, I have to get behind it just so I can get everything hooked on. And at this point, then I can tighten those clamps down. And I usually snug these clamps down, but they don't have to be Superman tight. At this point, we'll install our new seals into the pump here. So we have seal that goes on. We have an O-ring. Lubricate the O-ring. I will line these notches that we see here with the 2 notches on the pressure ring. So I'm going to slide this on. I'll rotate it until I feel it go into place, and I'll push it in 3 times again. Holds it in place. There is an O-ring right here on the shaft that needs to get replaced. It's good to lubricate this O-ring. We'll put it right in the groove. That seals the impeller to the shaft. Now we will install a new seal into the back plate, and notice the groove that we have here on the back of this seal. We'll line that up with the pin on the impeller. Lubricate your O-ring. I like to put the O-ring in the impeller first, like this. And now we'll install the seal, lining up the pin. And notice I have this at an angle. I have the pin lined up. I now will push and pop in that seal. So by compressing the O-ring on this side, it pops in on this side much easier. There we go. I put the O-ring, lubricated O-ring on the impeller nut. And now I'll install it. I'm going to push back on this impeller, snug it down. I now, again, have to hold the stub shaft. So I will hold the stub shaft. I will tighten the impeller nut down until we hit the correct torque. At this point, I will install a lubricated casing O-ring. So before I put the cover on, I'm going to point out that the threads on the clamp here should have some anti-seize on them. When you torque this down, anti-seize does help prevent the nut from going to the stud. Again, I will line up this notch right here with a pin on the casing. Line up the clamp. Take the clamp down by hand. And at this point, I would torque down the clamp to the proper torque. Before reattaching the guards, I always suggest putting your hand in here and rotating the stub shaft and the impeller at least a couple turns around to make sure there's no rubbing and everything feels smooth. We now can reinstall our 2 shields. Tighten it down. Second shield would go on this side, and you're ready to reinstall the pump.